My parents said, "We can't go against your sister's wishes." So they all went to Hawaii without me. When they came back, her stuff was on the lawn and my number was disconnected. My name is Jessica, and I'm 28 years old. Until recently, I lived in Portland, Oregon, in a house I inherited from my grandmother when I was 22. It's a beautiful 1940s craftsman-style home in the Hawthorne district, worth about $750,000 in today's market. My grandmother left it to me specifically because, as she wrote in her will, Jessica has always appreciated the history and character of this home, and I trust her to preserve its legacy. The house has 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a gorgeous kitchen that my grandmother renovated in the 1990s. It sits on a corner lot with mature oak trees and a garden that's been featured in the neighborhood home tour twice. I've spent the last 6 years lovingly maintaining every detail from the original light fixtures to the crown molding. But this story isn't really about the house. It's about my family, and how years of enabling and favoritism finally pushed me to my breaking point. My younger sister Madison is 25, and she's been the golden child since birth. Where I was studious and responsible, Madison was wild and charming. Where I saved money and planned for the future, Madison spent every penny and expected bailouts. Our parents, Robert and Linda Thompson, always made excuses for her behavior. She's just creative, they'd say, or she needs to find herself. When Madison dropped out of college after 2 semesters to pursue her art career, they supported her financially. When she racked up $15,000 in credit card debt buying supplies for jewelry she never sold, they paid it off. When she got evicted from 3 different apartments for not paying rent, they found her new places and covered the deposits. Meanwhile, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in accounting, worked my way up at a respected firm, and built a stable life. I never asked for money or help, and maybe that was my mistake. In our family dynamic, the squeaky wheel got the grease, and I wasn't squeaky enough. 3 years ago, Madison had what she called a housing crisis. She'd been living with her boyfriend Tyler in a studio apartment, but they broke up, and she couldn't afford the rent alone. She asked if she could stay with me just for a few months while she got back on her feet. I should have said no. Every instinct told me to say no. But she's my sister, and my parents had raised me to believe that family helps family, no matter what. So I said yes, with clear boundaries. She'd contribute $400 a month toward utilities and groceries, help with household chores, and actively look for her own place. Those boundaries lasted about 2 weeks. Madison never paid the $400. She said she was between income sources and would catch up later. She never helped with chores, leaving dishes in the sink for days and treating my home like a hotel. And instead of looking for her own place, she started talking about how cozy it was living together, how we were finally bonding as sisters. When I brought up the money and the mess, she'd get defensive. I thought family was supposed to support each other, she'd say, tears welling up in her eyes. I didn't know you were keeping score. Then she'd call our parents, and I'd get a lecture about being too rigid and not understanding what Madison is going through. The situation deteriorated over the months. Madison started bringing friends over for parties without asking. She began dating a new guy, Derek, who practically moved in too. They'd stay up until 3 a.m. playing music and talking loudly, despite my requests for quiet hours since I had to work early mornings. The final straw came when I discovered she'd been going into my room when I wasn't home. I found her wearing my clothes, using my expensive skincare products, and had even borrowed my grandmother's vintage jewelry without asking. When I confronted her about the jewelry, particularly a pearl necklace that had been my grandmother's wedding gift, she shrugged and said, "Grandma would have wanted us to share." I installed a lock on my bedroom door after that. By this point, Madison had been living with me for almost 3 years. 3 years of broken promises, unpaid contributions, and increasing entitlement. I'd asked her to move out multiple times, but she'd always have an excuse. She was almost ready to get her own place, or she just landed a big commission that would help her save up, or she was going through a hard time and needed family support. And every time I pushed back, my parents would intervene. "She just needs a little more time," Dad would say. "You have such a big house, and Madison is finally doing better," Mom would add. They made me feel selfish for wanting my own space back, for wanting to live by my own rules in my own home. The breaking point came in March. I'd been dating someone seriously for about 8 months, a wonderful man named David who worked as a software engineer. He was kind, responsible, and treated me with respect. We'd been talking about moving in together, and he'd started spending more nights at my place. Madison hated David. She thought he was boring and too controlling because he'd politely ask her to turn down the music when we were trying to sleep, or suggest that maybe Derek shouldn't be there every single night. She'd make snide comments about him constantly, rolling her eyes when he spoke and making jokes about how corporate he was. One evening, David and I came home from dinner to find Madison and Derek in our hot tub with 2 other friends, all of them drunk and naked. They'd made a mess of my backyard, left beer bottles everywhere, and were being incredibly loud. When I asked them to quiet down and clean up, Madison laughed and said, "Relax, Jessica. Learn to live a little." That night, David and I had a serious conversation. He told me gently but firmly that while he cared about me, he couldn't continue our relationship if Madison was going to be a permanent fixture in my home. "It's not fair to you," he said, "and it's not fair to us. She's taking advantage of your kindness, and your parents are enabling it." He was right, and I knew it. But I also knew that asking Madison to leave would mean dealing with her tears, her manipulation, and my parents' disappointment. I'd been avoiding that confrontation for 3 years, and it had cost me my peace of mind, my privacy, and now potentially my relationship. The next morning, I sat Madison down for what I decided would be our final conversation about her living situation. "Madison," I said, "I need you to find your own place. I'm giving you 60 days, which is more than generous. I'll help you look for apartments, I'll give you references, but you need to move out." She immediately started crying. "But why? I thought we were happy living together. Is this about David? Are you really going to choose some guy over your own sister?" "This isn't about David," I said, though it partially was. "This is about the fact that you've been living here for 3 years, you've never contributed financially despite multiple agreements, and I need my own space back." "I can't afford my own place," she sobbed. "You know how hard it is for artists right now. And I have been contributing. I've been helping with emotional support and companionship." "Emotional support and companionship don't pay the utility bills," I said firmly. "You're 25 years old, Madison. It's time to figure this out." She ran upstairs, slammed her door, and immediately called our parents. Within an hour, I had both Mom and Dad on a conference call, lecturing me about family loyalty and asking why I was being so cruel to Madison when she was finally in a good place. "She needs stability right now," Mom said. "And you have more than enough room. What's the harm in letting her stay a little longer?" "The harm," I said, "is that it's my house. I'm not comfortable with the current arrangement, and she's 25 years old. She needs to learn independence." "But where will she go?" Dad asked. "You can't just throw family out on the street." "I'm not throwing her out on the street. I'm giving her 2 months to find a place, and I'm offering to help her look." The conversation went in circles for an hour, with my parents alternating between guilt trips and appeals to my better nature. Finally, Mom said, "Well, we're very disappointed in you, Jessica. We raised you better than this." After that call, Madison's behavior became even worse. She started bringing Derek over every single night, and they'd be deliberately loud, playing music and talking until all hours. She stopped doing any household tasks entirely, leaving messes everywhere. When I'd ask her to clean up, she'd say, "Why should I? You're just going to kick me out anyway." The 60-day deadline came and went. When I asked Madison about her apartment search, she said she hadn't found anything suitable in her price range. When I asked what her price range was, she couldn't give me a straight answer. "Look," she finally said, "I don't understand why you're being so mean about this. Mom and Dad said I can stay. As long as I need to. This is family property anyway, right? Grandma would want us both to be happy here." That comment about the house being family property sent a chill through me. I called my parents that evening to clarify the situation. "Did you tell Madison she can stay as long as she wants?" I asked. "We told her that family sticks together," Mom said defensively. "And that you'd come around to being more reasonable." "Mom, this is my house. Grandma left it to me specifically. Madison doesn't have any legal right to be here, and I've been more than patient." "Legally, maybe," Dad said, "but morally, she's family. And frankly, Jessica, we think you're being selfish. You have a huge house that you got for free, and Madison just needs a little support while she builds her art career." "I didn't get this house for free," I said, frustrated. "I've been maintaining it, paying property taxes, insurance, and utilities for 6 years. And Madison isn't building an art career, she's taking advantage of my generosity." "That's a very cold way to look at it," Mom said. After that conversation, I realized my parents weren't going to support me in this situation. They'd chosen Madison, just like they always had. But it was still my house, and I still had the right to decide who lived there. I decided to take legal action. I consulted with a lawyer and learned that since Madison had been living there for over a year and had established residency, I'd need to formally evict her. The process would take several months and cost me thousands of dollars in legal fees. Meanwhile, Madison's behavior continued to escalate. She started inviting more people over for parties, sometimes people I didn't even know. She gave Derek a key without asking me. One morning, I woke up to find a stranger sleeping on my couch, someone who'd apparently been too drunk to drive home from Madison's party the night before. When I confronted her about the key and the parties, she said, "God, Jessica, you're turning into such a control freak. It's like you don't want me to have any friends or any fun." "I want you to have friends and fun in your own apartment," I replied. "Well, until I find something I can afford, this is my apartment too," she said with a shrug. That's when I knew she had no intention of ever leaving voluntarily. The eviction process began in earnest in April. I served Madison with formal papers, which she dramatically tore up in front of me while crying about how heartless I'd become. She immediately called our parents, and I received a furious call from Dad. "You're really going to evict your own sister?" he asked, his voice full of disappointment. "I'm going to reclaim my own home," I said. "She's had 3 years to get her life together, and multiple opportunities to leave gracefully. This is going to destroy our family," Mom added, having joined the call. "Madison's behavior is what's destroying our family," I replied. "I've been more than generous, and she's taken advantage of that generosity at every turn." "Well, don't expect us to support you in this," Dad said coldly. "We won't be part of throwing Madison out of her home." "It's not her home," I said firmly. "It's mine." They hung up on me. What followed was the most isolating period of my life. Madison launched a full-scale campaign to paint me as the villain, reaching out to extended family members, old family friends, and even some of my co-workers who knew our family. She told everyone who would listen that I was kicking her out on the streets for no reason, and that our grandmother would be rolling in her grave if she knew what I was doing. My cousin Sarah, whom I'd always been close to, called me one evening after apparently receiving one of Madison's tearful phone calls. "Jessica, is it really necessary to evict Madison?" she asked. "I mean, I know she can be difficult, but she's family. And she sounds absolutely devastated." I found myself explaining the entire situation again, the 3 years of broken promises, the unpaid contributions, the disrespect for my home and belongings, the parties, the boyfriend who'd essentially moved in. But as I spoke, I could hear in Sarah's tone that Madison's version of events had already colored her perception. "I understand you're frustrated," Sarah said carefully, "but maybe there's a middle ground? Maybe you could give her a little more time?" "I've given her 3 years, Sarah. How much more time is reasonable?" "I don't know, but eviction seems so harsh. It's not like she's a stranger who's refusing to pay rent. She's your sister." After that conversation, I realized that Madison's manipulation was working. She was successfully framing herself as the victim of a cruel, heartless sister who cared more about money than family. The fact that it was my house, my rules, my right to decide who lived there seemed irrelevant to everyone who heard her sob story. Even worse, some of my own friends began questioning my actions. My friend Kelly, whom I'd known since college, took me out for coffee and gently suggested that maybe I was going too far. "I get that you're frustrated with Madison," she said, "but she's been living there for 3 years. It's basically her home at this point. Don't you think there might be a less extreme solution?" "Like what?" I asked, feeling increasingly alone in my position. "Maybe you could draw up a proper rental agreement? Set clear financial expectations and consequences? Give her one final chance to prove she can be a responsible housemate?" I stared at Kelly, someone I'd considered a close friend, and realized she didn't understand at all. "Kelly, I've tried setting clear expectations multiple times. Madison doesn't follow through on anything. A rental agreement would just be another piece of paper for her to ignore." "But at least you'd have tried everything before resorting to eviction," Kelly said. "Right now, it kind of looks like you jumped straight to the nuclear option." That comment stung because I knew it wasn't true, but I also knew that Madison's narrative was more compelling than mine. The story of the mean older sister kicking out the struggling younger sister was easier to understand and sympathize with than the complex reality of years of boundary violations and manipulation. The legal proceedings dragged on through April and into May. Madison's lawyer argued that she'd established tenancy rights and that I hadn't followed proper procedures before beginning eviction. My lawyer countered that Madison had never been a formal tenant, had never paid rent, and was essentially a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. During this time, Madison's behavior in the house became absolutely unbearable. She seemed determined to make every day as difficult as possible for me, apparently hoping I'd give up on the eviction and let her stay. She started bringing home different men every few nights, making sure they were loud and disruptive. She'd leave rotting food in the refrigerator deliberately, knowing I'd eventually have to clean it out. She began taking extremely long showers during peak hours, running up the water bill out of spite. One morning, I woke up to find that she'd used my expensive skincare products to give herself and Derek face masks, leaving the empty containers on my bathroom counter with a note that said, "Thanks, sis, heart emoji." Another evening, I came home to discover she'd rearranged all the furniture in the living room without asking, claiming she was helping improve the energy flow of the space. When I moved everything back, she accused me of being controlling and unable to adapt to change. The worst incident happened in early May. I came home from work to find Madison hosting what she called an art appreciation party in my backyard. About 15 people were there, some of whom I'd never seen before, drinking wine and examining pieces from Madison's portfolio. They'd moved my outdoor furniture around, trampled my flower beds, and left wine glasses and plates scattered everywhere. When I asked Madison why she hadn't told me about the party, she said, "I didn't think you'd mind. It's not like you ever used the backyard anyway. I was actually doing you a favor by bringing some culture and creativity into this stuffy house. Madison, you can't just invite 15 strangers into my home without asking, I said, trying to keep my voice level. They're not strangers, they're potential clients and fellow artists, she replied dismissively. And technically, this is my home too until the eviction goes through. No, it's not your home. It's my house, and you're a guest who's overstayed her welcome. One of her friends, a pretentious guy in a beret who'd apparently had several glasses of wine, decided to chime in. Wow, Madison, you weren't kidding about your sister's negative energy. I can literally feel the hostility radiating from her. She's been like this ever since she started dating that corporate drone, Madison said loudly enough for everyone to hear. She used to be fun and spontaneous, but now she's all about rules and schedules and making money. I stood there, surrounded by strangers in my own backyard, listening to my sister perform our family drama for an audience, and felt something break inside me. Not break in a dramatic, emotional way, but break in a quiet, final way. Like a rope that's been fraying for years finally snapping. Everyone needs to leave, I said calmly. Now. Jessica, don't be ridiculous, Madison said, laughing nervously. We're just having a civilized gathering to discuss art and creativity. Everyone needs to leave my property immediately, or I'm calling the police, I repeated. The beret guy started to say something about bourgeois property obsession, but one of the other guests, apparently more sober and sensible, started gathering up wine glasses and encouraging people to head out. After everyone left, Madison and I had the biggest fight we'd ever had. She accused me of embarrassing her in front of important contacts, of sabotaging her career, of being jealous of her artistic talents. I told her she was delusional, entitled, and completely lacking in respect for other people's boundaries. You know what your problem is, Jessica? She screamed at me. You're angry that I'm living my dreams while you're stuck in some boring office job, counting other people's money and pretending that makes you important. Your dreams? I shot back. Madison, you haven't sold a piece of art in 2 years. You don't have a career, you have a hobby that you use to justify taking advantage of people who care about you. At least I'm not dead inside like you, she said, her voice cold and cruel. At least I haven't given up on having a life outside of spreadsheets and mortgage payments. You want to know what being dead inside looks like? I said, my voice equally cold. It's spending 3 years watching someone you love take advantage of your generosity while your parents make excuses for their behavior. It's realizing that your own family sees you as a resource to be used rather than a person to be respected. Madison's face went pale. For a moment, I thought I'd finally gotten through to her, that she might actually understand how her actions had affected me. Instead, she said, fine. If that's how you really feel, then I guess we have nothing more to talk about until you come to your senses. She stormed upstairs, and I heard her on the phone with our parents within minutes, no doubt giving them her version of the evening's events. Sure enough, I received a call from Mom the next morning. Jessica, Madison told us about what happened last night, she said, her voice heavy with disapproval. She said you humiliated her in front of her professional contacts. Her professional contacts? I repeated incredulously. Mom, they were random people drinking wine in my backyard without my permission. One of them insulted me to my face. Maybe if you try to be more welcoming instead of immediately going into attack mode, Mom suggested. I came home from work to find 15 strangers in my yard, Mom. How exactly should I have reacted? Like someone who cares about her sister's well-being and career, Mom said. Madison is trying to build something for herself, and you're undermining her at every turn. That conversation confirmed what I'd been slowly realizing. My parents weren't just enabling Madison's behavior toward me, they were actively encouraging it. In their minds, I was the problem for not being more accommodating, more understanding, more willing to sacrifice my own comfort for Madison's convenience. After that night, something fundamental shifted in my perspective. I stopped feeling guilty about the eviction. I stopped second-guessing my decision to reclaim my space. And I started planning for the possibility that this conflict might permanently damage my relationship with my entire family. Because if they were willing to support Madison's increasingly outrageous behavior, if they thought it was reasonable for her to host parties in my backyard without permission and then blame me for objecting, then maybe these weren't relationships worth preserving. Over the next few weeks, my parents completely froze me out. They wouldn't return my calls, didn't respond to my texts, and when I tried to visit them, they claimed they were too busy to see me. Madison, meanwhile, told everyone who would listen that I was kicking her out for no reason and that I'd changed since dating David. The legal process moved slowly, as these things do. Madison fought every step of the way, claiming she had tenants' rights and that I was discriminating against her for her lifestyle. She hired a lawyer using money that I suspected came from our parents, though they denied it when I asked. During this period, David and I put our relationship on hold. The stress of the situation was affecting every aspect of my life, and I didn't think it was fair to drag him through the legal drama. He was understanding but told me to call him when I'd sorted things out. In May, about a month into the eviction process, my parents called me with what they presented as exciting news. "We're planning a family vacation to Hawaii," Mom said, her voice artificially bright. 2 weeks in Maui, staying at that resort we went to when you girls were teenagers. Remember how much fun we had? I did remember. It had been one of the few family trips where Madison and I had gotten along well, spending hours boogie boarding and building sandcastles despite being teenagers. "That sounds wonderful," I said cautiously, wondering why they were telling me about a vacation they clearly didn't intend to invite me on. "Well, we wanted to run it by you," Dad said, "because Madison really wants to go, and we know things have been tense between you two." "Are you inviting me?" I asked directly. There was a pause. "The thing is," Mom said slowly, "Madison said she wouldn't be comfortable going if you were there, given everything that's happening with the house situation." "So you're choosing to exclude me from a family vacation because Madison doesn't want me there," I said, my voice flat. "It's not about choosing sides," Dad said quickly. "It's about keeping the peace. Madison is going through a really hard time right now with the eviction and everything. The eviction that's happening because she refused to move out of my house after 3 years of taking advantage of my generosity," I pointed out. "Jessica, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," Mom said. "We can't go against Madison's wishes on this. She's just too fragile right now." "But you can go against mine," I said. "You're stronger than Madison," Dad said, as if that made it better. "You always have been. You can handle disappointment better." I sat there for a moment, processing what they were telling me. My parents were choosing to exclude me from a family vacation because my sister, who had been freeloading in my house for 3 years, didn't want me there. "When are you going?" I asked. "Next month," Mom said. "June 15th through 29th. We're really excited about it." "I hope you have a wonderful time," I said, and hung up. That evening, I sat in my living room, looking around at the house my grandmother had left me, the house I'd lovingly maintained for 6 years, the house where my sister was currently upstairs laughing with her boyfriend while I dealt with the fallout from trying to reclaim my own space. Something hardened inside me that night. For years, I'd been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who didn't make waves or demand attention. I'd accepted my parents' favoritism toward Madison, made excuses for her behavior, and sacrificed my own comfort to keep the family peace. But they'd finally pushed me too far. By choosing to exclude me from the family vacation, they'd shown me exactly where I stood in their priorities. Madison's comfort mattered more than my feelings. Madison's wishes were more important than treating me with basic respect. If they could choose Madison over me, then I could choose myself over all of them. I called my lawyer the next morning and asked about expediting the eviction process. I also started making some other calls. The first call was to my cousin Rebecca, who worked in real estate. I asked her to quietly start researching what it would take to sell my house quickly if I decided to move. "Are you thinking of relocating?" she asked. "Maybe," I said. "I'm considering some major life changes." The second call was to David. We met for coffee that afternoon, and I told him everything that had happened with my parents and the Hawaii trip. "I'm sorry, Jessica," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "That's incredibly unfair." "I keep thinking I should be used to it by now," I said. "But somehow, this feels different. Worse. Because they're not just enabling Madison's behavior toward you," David said thoughtfully. "They're actively participating in it. They're choosing to exclude you from family events to accommodate her unreasonableness." "Exactly," I said, feeling validated. "And I'm done with it. I'm done being the understanding one, the flexible one, the one who sacrifices for the good of the family." "What are you thinking of doing?" he asked. I looked at him, this kind man who'd been patient with me through months of family drama, and made a decision that would change everything. "I'm thinking of starting over," I said. "New city, new job, new life. Are you interested in coming with me?" His face lit up. "I've actually been hoping you'd say something like that. I got a job offer in Denver last month, but I turned it down because I didn't want to leave you behind." "Denver," I repeated, considering it. "That sounds perfect." We spent the next hour talking about possibilities, about what it would mean to leave Portland and build a life together somewhere new. For the first time in months, I felt hopeful instead of angry. That evening, I made a decision that would seem petty to some and justified to others. I decided that if my family could exclude me from their plans, I could exclude them from mine. I called Rebecca back and asked her to officially start the process of listing my house for sale. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "It's a seller's market right now, so you'll get a good price, but this is a big decision." "I'm sure," I said. "I want it sold as quickly as possible." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Rebecca was right about the market, and within days of listing, I had multiple offers above my asking price. I accepted an offer from a young couple who fell in love with the house's character and were willing to pay $785,000 for a quick close. Meanwhile, the eviction process was finally nearing completion. Madison would be legally required to vacate the premises by June 10, just 5 days before my parents and she were scheduled to leave for Hawaii. I didn't tell anyone in my family about selling the house. Madison was so focused on fighting the eviction and preparing for her vacation that she didn't notice the real estate photographer coming through or the for sale sign that I had temporarily put up when she was out with Derek. David and I made plans to move to Denver at the end of June. He accepted the job offer he'd previously turned down, and I applied for positions with several accounting firms there. Having a CPA license made me marketable anywhere, and I quickly lined up interviews. As June approached, I found myself actually looking forward to my family's departure for Hawaii. Madison had been making the house unbearable, throwing fits about the eviction and generally making every day miserable with her drama and hostility. "I hope you're happy," she said to me the morning before they were supposed to leave for vacation. "You've gotten what you wanted. I'll be gone, and you can live in your precious house all alone." "Actually," I said calmly, "I'm very happy. Happier than I've been in years." She stumped off to finish packing, muttering about how I'd changed and become cold-hearted. On June 15th, I drove them all to the airport. The car ride was tense, with Madison sulking in the back seat and my parents making awkward small talk about the weather and their resort reservations. At the airport, Dad gave me a brief, uncomfortable hug. "I hope you'll think about what we talked about while we're gone," he said. "Maybe when we get back, we can all sit down and work something out." "What kind of something?" I asked. "Maybe Madison could stay just a few more months while she saves up enough for a proper place," Mom suggested hopefully. I smiled. "We'll see," I said. Madison didn't hug me goodbye. She just looked at me with wounded eyes and said, "I never thought you could be so cruel to your own sister." "Have a wonderful vacation," I replied. I watched them disappear into the terminal, then drove home to prepare for the most satisfying 2 weeks of my life. The first thing I did was change all the locks on the house. Madison had made copies of keys for Derek and who knows who else, and I wanted to make sure no one could get in while they were gone. The second thing I did was begin packing Madison's belongings. All of them. Every piece of clothing, every art supply, every personal item she'd accumulated over 3 years of living in my house. I was methodical about it, carefully packing everything in boxes and garbage bags, making sure nothing was damaged or left behind. I packed her jewelry, her books, her decorations, her furniture, her kitchen items, everything. Derek's things too, since he'd essentially been living there. I even packed items I'd given her as gifts over the years. If she wanted to paint me as the villain, she could have all the evidence of my previous generosity to remember me by. The house showing continued while they were gone, with Rebecca handling the appointments. The buyers were eager to close, and we set a date for June 30th, just a few days after my family was due to return. On June 20th, I got a job offer from a prestigious accounting firm in Denver, with a salary that was 20% higher than what I'd been making in Portland. I accepted immediately. David and I spent our evenings apartment hunting online, video chatting with potential landlords and sending applications. We found a beautiful 2-bedroom place in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, with exposed brick walls and huge windows. We could move in July 1st. Everything was falling into place. On June 25th, I had the moving company come to pack up my belongings. They were professional and efficient, and by evening, everything I wanted to keep was either packed in boxes or loaded in my car. The house looked strange, empty of both my things and Madison's. Just bare rooms with original hardwood floors and afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. It was beautiful in its emptiness, and for a moment, I felt the pang of sadness about leaving. But the sadness passed quickly. This house had been my sanctuary, but it had also become a battleground. I was ready for a fresh start. On June 26th, I arranged Madison's belongings on the front lawn. Neatly, carefully, with everything in labeled boxes and bags. I set up a small table with a sign that read "Free to Good Home" for any item she might not want to keep. I also disconnected my phone number and set up a new one with a Denver area code. I left no forwarding address, no way to contact me. By the time I finished, the sun was setting, and the neighborhood looked peaceful and quiet. A few neighbors had come by to ask about the stuff on the lawn, and I'd explained that my sister was moving and hadn't been able to arrange for pickup. That night, I stayed in a hotel near the airport, ready to fly to Denver the next morning to start my new life with David. At 6 a.m. on June 27th, as I was getting ready to head to the airport, my phone started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I assumed they were spam calls and ignored them. It wasn't until I was boarding my plane that I realized what was happening. My family had returned from Hawaii. I turned off my phone and settled into my seat, feeling a mixture of anticipation and relief. Below me, Portland grew smaller and smaller, until it disappeared entirely beneath the clouds. David picked me up at the Denver airport, and we drove through the city toward our new neighborhood. Denver was beautiful, with the Rocky Mountains visible in the distance and an energy that felt fresh and full of possibility. Any regrets? David asked as we pulled into the parking lot of our new apartment building. None, I said, and meant it. We spent the next few days settling into our new place, exploring the neighborhood, and preparing for our new jobs. I loved everything about Denver, the coffee shops, the hiking trails, the sense that I could be anyone I wanted to be. About a week after I'd arrived, curiosity got the better of me, and I checked my old email account. There were dozens of messages from my family, starting with confusion and escalating to anger. The first few emails from Mom were worried, "Jessica, we can't reach you, and Madison's things are missing from the house. Please call us." Then came the realization. We drove by the house and saw the sold sign. "Jessica, what have you done?" Finally, anger. "How could you do this to your own family? Madison is devastated. Your father and I are ashamed of you." There were similar messages from Dad and Madison, with Madison's emails being particularly dramatic. "You've destroyed my life, and I never want to see you again, and how could you be so heartless?" I read through them all, feeling strangely detached. These people, who had dismissed my feelings and excluded me from their family vacation, were now demanding explanations and consideration that they'd never shown me. I wrote one response, sent to all of them. "I hope you enjoyed your vacation to Hawaii. I used the time to make some changes in my life, just as you suggested I should when you told me I needed to be more flexible and understanding. I've sold the house and moved to a new city with David. I'm starting fresh, surrounded by people who respect my boundaries and value my happiness. Madison, your belongings were carefully packed and placed on the lawn for pickup. I made sure nothing was damaged. Derek's things were included as well. Mom and Dad, you made it clear that you couldn't go against Madison's wishes, even when those wishes meant excluding me from family events. I've decided I can't go against my own wishes anymore, which include living a life free from drama and manipulation. I wish you all the best, but I won't be in contact going forward. Please don't attempt to reach me. Jessica." I sent the email, then blocked all their addresses and phone numbers. That was 6 months ago. I've built a wonderful life in Denver. My job is challenging and rewarding, working with clients who appreciate my expertise. David and I have explored every hiking trail within 100 miles of the city, and we're planning a trip to Europe in the spring. I've made new friends through work and hiking groups, people who don't know anything about my family drama and see me as just Jessica, not Madison's responsible older sister or the daughter who doesn't need as much attention. Sometimes I wonder what happened after they found Madison's things on the lawn. Did she find a place to live? Did Derek help her move everything? Did my parents finally realize they'd pushed me too far? But mostly, I don't think about them at all. I don't miss the constant drama, the guilt trips, the feeling of walking on eggshells in my own home. I don't miss being taken for granted or being expected to sacrifice my happiness for everyone else's comfort. I know some people will think what I did was extreme. Maybe it was. But after years of being the understanding one, the flexible one, the one who always compromised, I finally chose myself. I finally said no to being treated as less important than Madison's feelings. My grandmother left me the house because she trusted me to preserve its legacy. In the end, I think she would have understood that sometimes preserving a legacy means knowing when to let go and start something new. I'm happy now, genuinely happy in a way I haven't been in years. I have a partner who values and respects me, a career that fulfills me, and a life free from people who take my kindness for weakness. Some bridges are worth burning, especially when crossing them only leads you back to places that never felt like home. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't elaborate or dramatic. Sometimes it's just living well, choosing happiness, and refusing to let anyone treat you as less than you deserve. My family thought they could exclude me from their lives when it was convenient and include me when they needed something. They learned too late that love and loyalty are two-way streets, and I'd finally stopped traveling theirs. The last I heard, through a mutual acquaintance, Madison is living with Derek in a small apartment across town from our parents. She's working part-time at a coffee shop and still complaining about how unfairly she was treated. My parents have apparently told people that I changed and became selfish after meeting David. Let them think that. I prefer to think I finally learned the difference between being kind and being a doormat, between supporting family and enabling dysfunction. I'll never know if they truly understood what they lost when they chose Madison's comfort over my dignity that day at the airport. But I know what I gained: self-respect, genuine happiness, and a life where I'm valued for who I am, not for what I can provide. And that's worth more than any family vacation, any inherited house, or any relationship built on obligation rather than mutual respect. So to anyone reading this who's been the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who always gives in to keep the peace, you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for everyone, including yourself, is to walk away. Your happiness matters too. Your boundaries matter too. And you deserve to be surrounded by people who see your worth, not just your usefulness. It took me 28 years to learn that lesson, But I'm grateful I learned it at all. Life is too short to spend it being taken for granted by people who claim to love you but refuse to show you basic respect. I have no regrets about the choice I made that day. Not one. And I never will.